Talk Radio.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome on this Monday evening, June 4th, to the Yaron Brook Show. Let me just, today we're going to do kind of a news briefing. I'm going to cover some stories from the news. We're going to start with the Supreme Court. We're going to talk about Donald Trump pardoning himself. We'll see what else. Monsanto, Tiananmen Square, Saudi Arabia, a lot to talk about. And of course, I'm always open to taking your questions on YouTube, on Super Chat on YouTube. So those of you who want to ask questions, put your money where your mouth is and ask a question. Anti-Semites in the audience, please leave. We've got one active on YouTube right now. All right, let me remind everybody, if you want to get notified about the show when it's starting and everything, you need to subscribe to the show on YouTube. Press subscribe, and you will be notified. You also need to press, I guess, the bell symbol at the top to kind of to receive notifications from me. Also, you also get advance warning about all my shows if you contribute on Patreon. Patreon allows you to contribute to our efforts here and to working to bringing you Ayn Rand's ideas, or the application of Ayn Rand's ideas, or my best effort at applying Ayn Rand's ideas to current events and to the world around us. You can support that effort by making a contribution on Patreon. We've got some ambitious goals on Patreon, so please, I'd really appreciate your help and appreciate your support for doing so. I offer you in return is all these shows, lots and lots and lots of shows. Also, of course, you can find out about shows on Facebook, on Twitter, and just follow me. It's just that's all you need is just follow me out in the various social media platforms. But to the extent that you can contribute and subscribe, I'd appreciate that, particularly the contribution. All right, big, highly anticipated, put it that way, not so big, highly anticipated Supreme Court decision today, which disappointed, I think, everybody, because it really showed how petty, unprincipled, uninteresting, boring, unprincipled. Did I say unprincipled already? I don't know. The Supreme Court is. The Supreme Court of the land, the people who are supposed to rule on principle, the people who are supposed to protect our liberties and freedoms from the depravity of, I don't know, democracy, the people who are supposed to protect the rule of law, are just pathetic. This Supreme Court this ruling is pathetic because it skirts all the major issues. It ignores anything of substance. It doesn't come down hard on either side. It kind of puts one foot on each side and wiggles around without taking a position. Even if you take a position I disagree with, at least take a frigging position. But nothing, no decision was made here. So basically they ruled that in this particular case, in the specific particular case, that is not generalizable, the cake decorator, we can't call him a baker, the cake decorator can withhold his services from the gay couple. Not because he has a right to free speech, let's say, which I'm skeptical a little bit about whether cake decorations are speech, but somewhat it includes. So not because he has free speech, right? No, that would be way too principled an argument. Of course, the implications of that would be there are lots of people who have free speech that neither conservatives nor leftists would like to grant them the freedom not to serve people of a minority. So this is all driven by cowardice, right? So the case was not decided on the basis of free speech. It was not decided on the basis of what I think is the most important right relevant here, which that is the freedom of association. I have a right to associate with anybody I want. And as long as I'm not infringing on other people's rights, I have a right to discriminate. I have a right to turn people away, whether it's, politically correct to do so, whether it's nice, whether it's rational or not. It's not the role of the government to tell me who to associate with and who not to associate with. And if I don't want to sell a cake to a gay couple, I shouldn't have to sell a cake to a gay couple. If I don't want to sell a cake to Jews, I shouldn't have to sell a cake to Jews. If I don't want to sell a cake to, white males, I shouldn't have to sell a cake to white males. Ultimately, the marketplace will take care of the irrationality of people who are trying to run a business based on that kind of discrimination, stupid discrimination. And I think this is stupid discrimination. Not wanting to sell a cake to a gay couple is stupid, irrational, just disgusting in my view. I give no credence to irrational, mystical viewpoints. So no, he had a right to discriminate. But of course, if that's the case and you bump up against the Civil Rights Act that says that you don't have a right to discriminate based, and lots of labor law and lots of state law and federal law that says you can't discriminate based on color of skin, based on gender, based on sexual orientation, based on a million different things. You can't discriminate. So freedom of association is out the window. So of course the Supreme Court couldn't rule that the baker had the right to freedom of association. They couldn't rule that because the implication would be that everybody has a right to discriminate against anybody. And there goes the civil rights, at least a big chunk. The bad chunk. I'm a big supporter of much of the Civil Rights Act, but the bad part of the Civil Rights Act would go. The part that Barry Goldwater objected to would go. Good riddance. But no Supreme Court in the land. Conservatives, leftists, doesn't matter who the people are going to rule against the Civil Rights Act and are going to rule for the freedom of association, implying a right to discriminate. That's not in the cards. So that didn't happen. They didn't even rule on the basis of freedom of religion. Now, I don't think there is such a thing as freedom of religion. There's freedom, and there's freedom of having an opinion and having a philosophy or having a point of view or having ideas. You should be able to have any ideas that you want. There's nothing special about the ideas that are mystical. There's nothing special about faith. There's nothing special about religion. All ideas you should be protected to be able to think and express your thoughts as you see fit on your property, without the government having any role in discriminating against you. So, there's a sense in which there's freedom of religion, but it's really freedom of thought, all thoughts, including bad and evil thoughts. You have a freedom to hold those thoughts. And as a consequence, you have the freedom not to associate with people who don't agree with you on your thoughts. Again, whether it's rational, irrational, whatever, you have a right to discriminate based on this idea of freedom of expanded religion, freedom of ideas. You have a right to discriminate based on freedom of association, and you have a right to discriminate based on freedom of speech. Now, but none of these were good enough for the Supreme Court of the United States of America. With smartest judges, we got Gorsuch, we got Thomas, we got all these guys. None of them had the balls, the courage, the intellectual decency, the integrity to make an argument based on any of these things. They delayed that argument for another case. And in this case, what they based their argument was on the treatment the baker received by the Civil Rights Commission in the state of Colorado. So when the Civil Rights Commission in the state of Colorado ruled that the baker had to bake the bread, the cake decorator had to decorate the cake for the gay couple. The commissioners also made all these anti-religion statements and implied that they are anti-religious in and of itself, that they are against religion. And that was the basis on which the court ruled for the, I keep calling him a baker because I've got baker in my head from Adam Smith. You know, the baker doesn't bake the bread to make you happy. I don't know why I've got baker on my head from Adam Smith, but it's, the cake decorator won the case on a technicality, nothing else. And I mean, I don't like this cake decorator. I don't like Christians who won't associate with gay people. I find that despicable and horrible. So I don't like the cake decorator. He won here for the wrong reasons. He should have won and with it thrown out the entire section of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and all of the thousands of laws and regulations that regulate employment in this country, that intervene in our freedom of association, in the right to hire whoever you want, to fire whoever you want, to pay them whatever you and they negotiate, all of that, right? You have a right to discriminate. But of course, if the Supreme Court actually ruled that, not on the basis of religion, but just actually ruled that you don't have a right to discriminate, or that you do have a right to discriminate, sorry, then it would overturn. I mean, it would be you think Donald Trump is controversial. This would be a million times more controversial. And there's no way the Supreme Court would do it, particularly not a Supreme Court, following Scalia, which is so concerned with the will of the people, with kind of the democratic appeal of what they pass. And this was a way for them not to commit one way or the other. It's a way to, again, the cake decorator won on a technicality. And the Supreme Court has still not ruled whether a Christian fill in the blank could discriminate against gays based on their religion. That the Supreme Court has not made a determination about. Now, I did a long show about this, about the idea of religious liberty and its special place in American culture, which I think is misplaced. I did that in, I'm looking for it, can't find it. Oh, I thought I had it. Well, there you go. It's gone. It was on Blog Talk Radio. So in my podcast, you can find it on iTunes. I think October 2017, I think it was when this case was argued before the Supreme Court. That's when I did the show. So if you want to really dig into the whole idea of religious freedom, why I don't think there is such a thing fundamentally as religious freedom, there's just freedom of ideas, then I covered in great depth and length over there. I think that the Supreme Court, in order to be consistent, had to rule in favor of the gay couple. There's nothing special about being gay that makes it okay to discriminate against you. But if you're Jewish, you can't discriminate against me. Or if you're black, you can't discriminate against me. Or if you're whatever, you can't. So we either have a consistent rule one way or the other, a consistent rule that says that which is the right rule, right? There's freedom of association and you should be able to discriminate. Or we have a rule that says you can't, but then you can't across the board. And then where the limits and what counts as discrimination and all that mess. This is part of the reason why it's impractical. All right. Voluntary exchange did not win, right? Voluntary exchange did not win. Read the decision. The decision said nothing about voluntary exchange. It had said nothing about freedom of association. I wish freedom of association had won, but that is not the basis of the decision. And what matters often in a Supreme Court decision is the reason why they vote matters often more than what they voted themselves. So again, read the decision, read the commentary. Actually, Ben Shapiro has some good commentary on this on his blog today, and he calls it right. And he says religious Americans should still be worried. I think but the article itself is not oriented towards religion. The article itself is much better than the title. And a lot of commentators have made this case from left and right that the Supreme Court basically ignored the issue and ruled on a technicality. So, I'm all for voluntary association if we could just do away with all the laws, all these laws that regulate voluntary association in the workplace or in trade, that is in stores, restaurants, and so on, then I would be much, much happier. All right, Taylor has a question for me before we get to pardoning oneself. Interesting concept. On your last show, you said you personally killed. Can you tell us more? Who did you kill? Why were you 100% sure of the morality of your actions? I killed terrorists. I killed people who, I didn't literally pull the trigger. I didn't actually pull the trigger. I identified the targets for the Air Force and the artillery or whoever to flatten, and they did. And the targets were homes where terrorists were hiding. They were terrorist strongholds. They were people who were shielding terrorists. And were you 100% sure of the morality of your actions? Yes, absolutely. To this day, I have no doubt of the morality of my actions. Did everybody I kill was a terrorist? No, there's always collateral damage, but the collateral damage is on the hands. The blood of innocence is on the hands of those who initiate force. It's on the hands of the terrorists. If you want to understand fully my view on killing in war, on morality of war, on collateral damage and killing innocents in war, then you need to read Equal is unfair. Jeez. Sometimes my mind just doesn't work. It's age or it's who knows what it is. Winning an Unwinnable War. I have 3 essays in there. 2 of them with Alex Epstein as a co-author. One of them with Ilan Journo as a co-author. The collection is edited by Ilan Journo. And the collection, the essays, I have an essay on the morality of war and just war theory, which is a critique of modern approaches to the morality of war and a laying out of my ideas with regard to the morality of war. My other pieces, they are also indicative of my attitude towards war and how to win it and the morality of it. I was conscripted, so I wasn't there voluntarily. I might have volunteered. It's hard for me to say. Hard for me to put myself into the head of the 18-year-old that I was, when was it? A long time ago, almost 40 years ago, 39 years ago, and figure out whether I would have volunteered. I think Israel is worth defending. I was living in Israel at the time. I think that if you live in Israel and if you value what you get in Israel, the freedoms that you get in Israel, certainly the relative freedoms that you get in Israel, then you should volunteer, given that the country is constantly under threat of violence and under threat of being destroyed. I'm against conscription armies. I'm against all conscription armies, including the conscription army in the state of Israel. I believe all military service should be voluntary service. So I was in military intelligence, identifying targets, marking them, literally marking the window the missile had to go through. I have no qualms about what we did. I wasn't in a decision-making position in terms of how extensive and what we were doing. I was in a decision-making position in terms of identifying the targets and targeting them and getting that intelligence to the appropriate people to execute on it. I've got lots of war stories, and most of them are sad and pathetic and show the horror and stupidity of war and the people engaged in it. Even the stupidity of many people within the Israeli military engaged in it. But that's for another day and another time. And if you want, and I suggest reading Winning the Unwinnable War and reading Ilan Journo's a new book, What Justice Demands, which is about Israel and the Palestinians. I think that's, everybody should read it. It's available June 12th. You can pre-order it now. You can pre-order on a Kindle, on a hardback copy. I think there's some softback copies as well. You should order them all. Of order the book. It's first of all, by ordering it, you're supporting the work Yaron is doing, but also by ordering it, I think you'll learn a lot. I think you'll learn a lot. It's a fabulous book. So get the new book, the new Yaron Jonah book called. All right, I need to do shows earlier in the day. I don't know. What Justice Demands. That's what the book is called. So buy it. All right, let's go to this idea of pardoning yourself. So let me find this. This is pretty hysterical, I think. So the president, as he does, tweeted, I think earlier this morning, as has been stated by numerous legal scholars, I have the absolute right to pardon myself. But why would I do that when I have done nothing wrong? I don't know. Wake me up when this presidency is over, because this is like a dream. This is so strange, right? I've done nothing wrong. There's no conspiracy. There's nothing to indict me on, and I can pardon myself. So who cares, right? And over the weekend, Rudy Giuliani, a person I hate, I despise, despise vehemently. And you can ask me why I despise Rudy Giuliani if you want, but I despise Rudy. He's a truly a little fascist and a opportunist, and just a disgusting human being. Anyway, Rudy, over the weekend, basically said, he implied, he didn't quite say it like this. He implied, Donald Trump could have shot the FBI director Comey. He literally said he could have shot Comey. And the appropriate thing, and he could pardon himself. And the only real thing that we can do against him is impeach him. You can't indict him because he would pardon himself. So he could literally murder people. He could put it, remember that statement he made 2 years ago, Donald Trump? That he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and he'd still get elected. It's true. It's true. And if that doesn't creep you out, if that doesn't make you think there's something really, really wrong with Trump and this country and our willingness to tolerate this thuggery, this authoritarianism. So who pardons themselves? Well, authoritarians do. Now, I don't think Trump could actually do it. I think we'd go to the Supreme Court. And I think even Republicans would impeach him if he tried. So I think we still have enough protections in the Constitution, in our system of government, to prevent a president from pardoning himself. Although the one option presented to Nixon for how this is actually done, if you wanted to be constitutional, is you basically take a leave of absence. You allow your vice president to become president. This is actually in a legal document presented to Nixon. And the vice president then pardons you, and then you come back from the leave of absence and you become president again. So that would technically probably be 100% legal, creepy, authoritarian, yeah, but it would be legal. I still think just for doing that, Congress should impeach you. But whoa, to be out there saying, hey, I can pardon myself. Come get me, guys. President of the United States. This is the country founded by George Washington, who could have stayed on, who could have become king. There would be no opposition to him crowning himself king. No opposition, him taking dictatorial power over the United States. And yet, after signing on to the Constitutional Convention and signing on to the Constitution, he was president for 8 years. And even though there were no term limits in those days, resigned. And now we've got a president who says, I can pardon myself, big deal. And of course, it's all with the idea that this is a witch hunt and they're going to make up charges and they're going to indict me for nonsense. But wait a minute. Do we live in a country where we believe in the rule of law? I mean, if you're innocent, fight them in court. That's what the rule of law is about. I mean, I don't like the idea of presidential pardons. I think presidential pardons should be rare, unusual, in weird circumstances. I think the rule of law is to play out. I don't think you should give the impression ever, like Clinton did when he pardoned what was his name, Rich, that really wealthy guy who was contributing money to the Clintons, but had run away to Switzerland to avoid prosecution in the United States and was pardoned. I mean, by the way, I mean, this just drives me nuts. Yaron, trying too hard to set objectivism apart from left and right. Trump is best choice, willing, able, and available. So I'm supposed to just ignore it when he says authoritarian bullshit? I'm supposed to just ignore it when he acts like a moron? So I'm just supposed to say, well, he's the best choice we have. So I'm going to pretend that he doesn't say the stupid, dumb, insane things that he says. I'm supposed to just pretend when he exhibits authoritarian trends that they're not authoritarian trends because, hey, he's the best choice we have. Are you people the nuts? Even if he's the best choice right now, you have a moral, civic, American duty to criticize every single thing that he does that is wrong. You have to point out his flaws. That's what this country is about. Otherwise, you're basically saying, he's the best choice we have. We're going to give him all the power he needs. And there goes freedom in America because it was the best choice that we had. You guys drive me nuts. Right? Fine, support Trump, vote for Trump. I'm fine with that. But when he acts like an authoritarian by saying he's going to pardon himself, or when he acts like a sanctioner of racism, like what he does with Roseanne, and he doesn't criticize it, but he shows the hypocrisy. When he acts like a brute, when he acts like an economic ignoramus, when he talks about tariffs, if you don't point those things out, then all you're doing is strengthening all the negative aspects within him. It is your moral, civic, American responsibility to stop being sheep. I hated George W. Bush and I criticized him constantly. I hated Obama and criticized him constantly. I hate Donald Trump and I'll criticize him constantly. Oh, he bombed Syria. You know, he threw hundreds, tens of millions of dollars worth of my tax money and your tax money into the desert in Syria with zero impact, while at the same time handing Syria on a silver platter to Putin, which might be the right thing to do. But don't pretend then by launching missiles into the desert that you're doing something. Wow. Yeah, when it comes to economics, Donald Trump is an ignoramus. When it comes to tariffs, he's an ignoramus. That's what he is, right? So, you know, your job is to criticize. Your job is not to say yes, man. The job of any kind of podcast, any kind of talk show host, any kind of is to be critical, right? So he's deregulating, and at the same time, he's behaving like what he's behaving, and I point those things out. Good for the deregulation, bad for everything else. But it's not a balance. It's what kind of character does this man have as president of the United States, and is this the character that you want in a president? Not in somebody who builds skyscrapers, who cares? But in a president of the United States, is this the character you want? And my answer to that is clearly no. No, no, no. And at the end of the day, character matters more than policy. I don't know exactly how, but you will suffer. You will suffer. All of us will suffer for the character flaws that Donald Trump has. Just you wait. He can do all the policy things right. But if he behaves like he's behaving right now and he gets away with it and you don't criticize him and you celebrate it, you cheer, yay, he's knocking down the establishment. You know, he'll pardon himself. Then you are part of the problem. And we will all suffer. We will all suffer for that. Character matters. It always matters. It always has mattered. And it's you know, I don't know. Sorry, I went off there. But had to be said. It had to be said. It's not a question of who's a better leader. I'm a better leader. You're probably a better leader than he is. It's not an issue of better leader. I'm not saying get rid of him and replace him with somebody. I don't know who to replace him with. That's not the question. Criticize him for what he is. You're not responsible for replacing him. But if you criticize him, at least you're saying, right? At least you're saying the things that he did wrong. And in a future leader, we want those things not to exist. But almost anybody out there, well, not almost anybody, because 40% of people love Donald Trump. So I don't know. I mean, there are lots of people who would be better leaders. I would be much better, just to name one. If that's what the game is at, is name a better leader. I'm happy to do that. You know, most of you would be. All right. Whew. I mean, you know, it's all consistent, right? Ben points this out on Facebook. You know, this president has taken pragmatism to a new level. He's a pragmatist on principle in a way that I mean, all presidents have been pragmatists, at least since FDR. And Ayn Rand called JFK. I'm telling you, since JFK, and Ayn Rand called JFK an anti-intellectual pragmatist, but JFK makes Donald Trump, I mean, JFK looks after Donald Trump like a principled, you know, thinking, intelligent president. I hate JFK, just so we're very clear. I hate JFK. I hate his policies, and I think he was a creep. But he makes this guy look, you know, he looks sane in comparison. And what Donald Trump has elevated pragmatism into almost a religion that his fans, you know, chant to. And you saw that in the Supreme Court. So, you know, the connection there's the Supreme Court. The decision is a completely pragmatic decision. They didn't want to rule on principle either way because they knew they'd get in trouble. So they ruled on a technicality in order to get away from it. They'll deal with it another time. And then they'll just revert back to you're not allowed to discriminate because you're not allowed to discriminate because the Civil Rights Act says so. And the majority of people in America believe you shouldn't be allowed to discriminate. So be it. And that's what's going to happen. But it's pragmatism everywhere, and kind of stupid pragmatism, dumbed down pragmatism. The excuses they give are so shallow and so silly and so. All right. So, you know, there's a lot. So I don't want to comment, and I haven't commented at all about this whole Mueller investigation, and partially because I don't want to get into it. It seems to me seedy and stupid. It seems to me that a lot of these people are really creeps. Manafort, the more I read about Manafort, the creepier it gets. I mean, this guy is really kind of one of the people who really got cronyism in Washington in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s to a level that had never been before. You know, he is unbelievably corrupt advisor to a Ukrainian corrupt, horrific president who was in bed with Putin, and then he gets a job, you know, running the campaign for the future president of the United States, and you know, so there's a lot of seedy, and I also am not dismissing the idea that a lot of it is a witch hunt, that a lot of it is. You know, all politicians have these kind of seedy sides to them, but they're really going after Trump because so many of them are Democrats and they want to go after Trump. So I'm not ruling any of that out. I don't know. I'm trying to avoid it, but some of this stuff is just, you know, this idea of shooting Comey, this idea of pardoning yourself, what Giuliani has been saying on the talk shows. I mean, Giuliani, as I said, is a creep. He's somebody I really, really dislike. For what he's done over his years. He's also definitely has an authoritarian streak in him. He leans that way. He ruled New York City. He cleaned up New York City by being a little fascist dictator, violating property rights left and right. And he did horrible things before that. So he'll never be forgiven. Not in my, he's on one of the bottom rungs of hell in my hell. But the whole thing is just so yucky. It's so unpleasant. All right. I am going to take a quick break here. I'm going to run a little commercial break. And then when we come back, I've got a few short topics I want to cover, because some interesting stuff about Monsanto, which I think is interesting, maybe about Saudi Arabia, and Tiananmen Square, 29 years to Tiananmen Square today. So I want to say something about that, and encourage you on YouTube to use the super chat to ask me any questions you might have. So we are going to be back in, soon, I think.
Did you know there's an easy, automatic way to support the Ayn Rand Institute all year long? For any purchase made at Amazon.com, the Amazon Smile program sends a small percentage to ARI. Doesn't matter what you buy, if you shop at Amazon, the money you spend can help spread Ayn Rand's ideas. Are you a student required to read bad philosophers? Buy the books on Amazon and support ARI. Birthdays, anniversaries, and Christmas, all these purchases add up. And it's not just you. Imagine the results if every Ayn Rand fan in the country used Amazon Smile to support ARI. Are you smiling? Sure you are. Sign up is free and easy. Just go to smile.amazon.com and make sure you select ARI as your Smile recipient. Our economic well-being depends on a vibrant and innovative financial industry. So why doesn't anyone speak up to defend finance? In their new book, In Pursuit of Wealth, The Moral Case for Finance, Yaron Brook and Don Watkins dispel the prevailing negative myths about finance and clearly lay out the industry's virtues within a moral framework. Brook and Watkins show how financiers use their minds to create wealth, not by taking existing materials and turning them into more valuable goods, but by taking existing wealth and putting it toward more valuable uses. The paperback and Kindle editions of In Pursuit of Wealth are available on Amazon. Get it now.
All right, we're back. You're listening to the Yaron Brook Show. Let me remind you all to subscribe to the Yaron Brook channel and to support the show on Patreon. We've got we reached the 400 patrons. My next target is 500. I'm hoping to do that by the end of June, although it's going to be a really stretch to get there by June. But really, the target now is 1,000, and to get the dollar amount up significantly, so that we can really become an independent entity that is out there advocating for your ideas, both through these podcasts, which I intend to expand and professionalize over time. We're slowly moving in that direction. And also through public speaking and going around the world giving talks. Your support on Patreon will help make all that possible. So thank you for those who are supporters, and thank you for those of you who are going to become supporters. Go do it now. All right, a few quick stories, and then I'm also entertaining questions on the super chat. Monsanto. So Monsanto's name will be going away. Monsanto has been bought out by a company called Bayer. You might know Bayer from Bayer Aspen. That's how I think of Bayer. Bayer Aspen is a German company that it's one of the largest pharmaceutical companies and one of the largest fertilizer businesses in the world. And Bayer has bought Monsanto. Now, Monsanto is known primarily for GMO. Monsanto started out as an artificial sweetener company that was named after a woman whose name, Olga Monsanto, and her husband, John Francis Queenie, named the company after her. And the company has grown to become one of the most innovative, one of the most interesting, and one of the largest agro companies in the world. It does bioengineering. It does genetically modified foods. It has patented seeds, which is quite controversial. And we'd have to talk to Adam Ossoff about patented seeds. But patented seeds, it also has herbicides, famously one of the herbicides called Roundup. Now, this is hugely controversial, and the company's been attacked nonstop for well over 10 years now, maybe 20 years now. Monsanto has been vilified as this evil company that is trying to manipulate the genetic code. And we're going to have Frankenfood. Frankenfood is going to take us over and kill us all. And Frankenfood will dominate the world, whatever. And it's really been vilified because of its great innovation, because of its great success, because it has actually been able to create these new types of plants that resist pests, that are better in different climates, that have different levels of vitamins, increased vitamins, so that they increase the nutritional quality of the food. Nicholas, thank you for the contribution there. Monsanto, in my view, is a real heroic company. At the Institute, Amanda has done a bunch of work on Monsanto. You can find it on the ARI website on Monsanto and GMOs. GMOs are fantastic inventions. I'm hugely pro genetically modified pretty much everything. I'm even open to genetically modified human beings. Certainly, I'm open to genetically modifying food, making it better, genetically modifying animals to make them more productive, like bees. We've been doing it since we started using our reason, breeding dogs, breeding cattle, there's almost no animal, certainly no animal that has been domesticated or being used in farms that exists in the same genetic form as it existed 10,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago. We have changed the genes by breeding all of these animals. And all Monsanto is doing is it's doing it scientifically, or much more scientifically. They're actually getting into the genes and actually changing the genes they wanted genes, versus kind of just selective breeding, which is, very sophisticated, can be very sophisticated. They've taken it to a whole new level. So hugely heroic, I think, company, hugely productive company. And, I'm big on them. And it's interesting to me that what Bayer has decided to do is eliminate the name Monsanto. Everything now will be called Bayer. And the main reason is not some efficiency, not because they want all their letterhead to have the same name, or the business cards to all have the same name. They basically do this because of the bad PR. Monsanto is hated in Europe. In Europe, there is no GMOs. And Bayer thinks that once the Monsanto name goes away, they can, through appeasement, but really through cronyism, right? They can probably convince, given that they're a German company, they can probably convince Europeans to start using GMOs. So it's sad. It's a sad day. It's a sad day because the Monsanto name should stand for science and for innovation and for moving the world forward, and for helping the poor. The poor are the biggest beneficiaries of GMO, particularly the poor in all countries around the world. They've been a massive help to American farmers. They've made farming incredibly more profitable. And if you don't like GMOs, you can eat organic fruits and vegetables. There's nothing wrong with that. You're paying a lot of money for that, but that's fine. There are lots of farmers specializing in organic, for those of you who only buy organic. And that's fine. That's called choice. And that's your choices. Hopefully you know what you're doing and you're basing it on some science. But what most people want is to eliminate the choice of having GMOs, which would basically commit many, basically bring about the kind of starvation, I think, that so many people have predicted would happen, because we had so many people. Taylor is asking, why do you think Europe is so scared of GMOs? I think they bought into the propaganda. Europe generally is, one of the things that I still think where you can see the American spirit still alive is Americans still generally love technology and they love science. And that's kind of an American thing, if you will. It's about increased standard of living, and it's about getting stuff done, and it's about the beauty of greater efficiency. Americans love this kind of stuff, right? They love this kind of stuff. And I think Americans have a huge trust in the technology companies, in science, in this case, in bioengineering. And Europeans don't have that. Europeans are skeptical. They're skeptical of big companies. They're skeptical of science. They're skeptical of technology. That's why you have the European Union, all these laws against Facebook and against Google. They hate Google. They hate Facebook. They're just, the sense of life, I think, at the end of the day, is skeptical and negative and malevolent and untrusting of progress, which is sad, because remember, Europe is the land of the Enlightenment. Europe is the land from which the Americans took the best ideas and brought them here and implemented them here in the creation of the United States of America. So it's the skepticism, and it's the malevolence, the negativity. It's why they don't have kids. I've said this many times. Europeans don't have kids because they don't believe in the future, because they don't believe in progress. They don't believe in science. They don't believe the world will be a better place in the future. All right, Nicholas has a question. What is the best way you recommend becoming well-versed in objectivism to start spreading the message? The best way is start by reading Ayn Rand. Read her nonfiction. Second, go to campus, aynrand.org/campus, and take as many of Leonard Peikoff's courses, starting from his course on objectivism, the history of philosophy, and then his more, I'd say, more advanced courses on objectivism. So really study Leonard Peikoff. He is the best teacher of objectivism. And in that context, read OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff. And then if you really want to go deep and you really want to become a teacher, if you will, you want to be somebody who actually goes out there and teaches objectivism, then I recommend applying to the Objectivist Academic Center, which is taught by Anke Gate and Greg Salamieri, and his name is slipping my mind. Somebody will remind me in a second online. But where you're getting the best education possible today in objectivism, and there are no better teachers of objectivism anywhere in the world than in the OAC, and it's philosophy. So it's not what you're getting in this podcast. I'm not teaching objectivism. I'm applying it and hopefully teaching you a little bit about how to apply it. But if you really want to study the ideas after you read Ayn Rand, right? Yes, so Ben Baer and Aaron are the other two teachers who I am embarrassed. I've forgotten their names, but I am on a roll today about being forgetful. I hope this isn't me declining into, some who knows what. I hope it's just me being tired, but there you go. So yes, Greg doesn't actually teach at the OAC. He teaches some graduate courses for ARI, but he might be teaching soon at the OAC. Anyway, in the future, I think Greg will probably be teaching as well. But it's the best place in the world to get an education, a deep education, and deepen your understanding of objectivism. Anke is phenomenal. Today, the best teacher of objectivism, I think, and as an among active teachers. So I would definitely encourage you all anybody interested in deepening their understanding and becoming a professional at it ultimately, go to the OAC, apply to the OAC, and hopefully you take the classes. Yaron, I typically build homes in 1 year, spend 6 years building in California, many aesthetics regulations. How can we chat about campaign for aesthetic freedom? I mean, it's not aesthetic freedom, it's property rights, right? It's none of your business what my building looks like. You are not guaranteed that the building built next door to you is going to be pretty. So there's no such thing as this. I mean, there is such a thing as aesthetic freedom, but this is not the case. Here, the issue is plain and simple property rights. You have a right to build what you see fit on your property. Unless somehow you're violating the rights of your neighbors by building a nuclear reactor there, or by creating a really hazardous conditions, or violating some contract or something like that. So the issue here is really property rights, and this needs to be fought. You might want to look into, in California, the Pacific Legal Foundation. The Pacific Legal Foundation is like the Institute for Justice, but they work in California primarily on property rights issues, defending property rights. So I encourage you to do that. Somebody's asking if Ankar's writing a book. I don't think so right now. He's written a lot of articles. Some of the best articles, I think, in the companion to Ayn Rand were by Ankar. I mean, there are many, many, many really, really good articles in that book by many. I think as a secondary source, it's probably the best secondary source on Ayn Rand in a sense of, other than Leonard. If you go and comment, certainly on commentary on Ayn Rand, it is the best. And it costs a lot of money, but I think you can get it for a decent price on Kindle. But it's a treasure trove of knowledge, and it should be part of what you read as you're studying objectivism. Greg Soleimeri's introductory essay is excellent because it frames how to approach studying Ayn Rand within the context of philosophy, in the context of philosophers and what is being taught today in philosophy department. So definitely pick up a copy of the companion. And but Ankar's written a lot of essays on Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead and a lot of other essays. And he also, so he's written quite a bit. He's writing a lot on the ARI's on ARI's website, on ARI's new journal. So you can find a lot of his writings there. I think his writing is excellent. And he teaches. I don't think he's writing a book right now because he's so busy. He is the, Chief Intellectual Officer of the Ayn Rand Institute. And man, is that a full-time job. That's more than a full-time job. So between teaching, writing articles, writing essays for the blog, or for the new journal, and just overseeing everything at the Institute for an Intellectual Perspective, he doesn't have time for a book. Greg is pointing out that the introduction, which I just complimented for the companion, is available for free online. So you can get it online, look at the companion to Ayn Rand Studies. Is that what it's called exactly? And you should be able to find the intro, the free intro to the companion, which is excellent. All right, here's another one. Thanks for separating yourself from the boilerplate conservative tripe. Let's remind them Rand supported atheism and abortion, hated neocons, racist goons. Well, neocons are not racist. Neocons have other problems. I hate neocons. I co-authored a book. I was a minor co-author on a book with Brad Thompson called Neoconservatism, an Obituary for an Idea, where we say, we wish we were dead and writing an obituary, but unfortunately they're not. They're all around us. I mean, I hate neocons. I certainly hate racist goons. And Ayn Rand was an atheist. Ayn Rand was pro-abortion, but more radical than atheism, more radical than supporting abortion. Ayn Rand was an egoist. She was an ethical egoist. She promoted rational self-interest as her ethical moral standard. And she was not just an advocate for reason. A lot of intellectuals today claim to be proponents of reason, but she defined reason, explained its functioning. She had a whole theory of epistemology. I mean, it still needs a lot of work to flesh out, but she started a whole project in epistemology to really ground our understanding of reason so that it can be defended properly one day, right? So you've got reason, you've got rational self-interest, and then of course she was laissez-faire capitalism. No conservative is a laissez-faire capitalist, not one of them. All right, let's see. So yes, so it's easy to separate myself from conservatives because I'm not a conservative, and neither was Ayn Rand. Nicholas says, just finished Fountainhead, thanks for the advice. All right, the real fun starts now, Nicholas, because you get to read Atlas Shrugged, and then after Atlas Shrugged, you get to read The Virtue of Selfishness and Capitalism, an Unknown Ideal, and your eyes will be, you will suddenly discover that you can see the world, reason, and understand the world. It's a phenomenal experience. Okay, continuing on a few of the depressing topics. 29 years ago, a young, brave, I think he was an architecture student, Chinese student, stood in front of a tank and in a sense pleaded with the Chinese army not to crush the student rebellion that was happening in China. Chinese students, about 1 million students, went out into the streets, primarily around Tiananmen Square, demanding more political freedom. They were becoming wealthier economically. Things were looking up from an economic perspective. They had a certain amount of freedoms, but they wanted more, and they wanted more fast. They were not willing to wait. And they went on the streets in a peaceful protest. And the protest lasted for weeks. And the Chinese government under Deng Xiaoping was not willing to grant them those freedoms. Deng would say Chinese are not ready. And indeed, Deng would argued that Chinese might never be ready, that always they will need a communist party to rule over them. I've said some positive things over the years about Deng Xiaoping because in the name of pragmatism, he liberalized the Chinese economy. And I think hundreds of millions of Chinese are thankful for that fact. But we can't forget that before he liberalized the economy, he was one of Mao's thugs who was responsible for the murder of millions of people. And that after Mao's death, and in spite of loosening the reins on the economy, he continued to be a brutal dictator. Not a totalitarian, but an authoritarian nevertheless. The difference is totalitarians, it's total control over everything you do. Total control in speech, total control in the economy, total control on your behavior. Authoritarians pick and choose where they're going to control. They don't have total control. China today is authoritarian, not totalitarian. Thank you, Ian, for the $50, and I'll get to you in a second. So here there were 1 million students out, and the Chinese government was getting impatient. They were clearly not going to succumb to the demands. They had a long-term plan that did not include political freedom, and they were not going to accelerate even the freedoms that they planned to allow. They had no intention of accelerating, but certainly not creating a precedent in which they were pressured by students, by demonstrations to give in. So on June 4th, 1989, 29 years ago, Deng Xiaoping, in anticipation of a visit from Gorbachev to China, wanted to clean up the mess and get it over with. He wanted Gorbachev to be able to come to Beijing without being hampered by demonstrations all over the city. He wanted to show the world that he was in control. And more importantly, I think, most importantly, he wanted to show the Chinese people he was in control. And the Chinese took the most brutal brigade that they could find. The brigade of peasants, a brigade still committed to Mao's ideas, a brigade that they knew would do whatever the Communist Party told them to do. And they put them in Tiananmen Square, and they put them on the roofs, and they put them in the tanks and in the armored vehicles, and they put them in the soldiers with the guns storming the square. And the square is massive. Those of you who haven't been in Tiananmen Square, you don't really get a sense of how massive that square was, filled with hundreds of thousands of students. And 29 years ago, those soldiers opened fire. And those tanks ran over students. They slaughtered them. According to official Chinese government numbers, 300 people were killed. According to Chinese Red Cross, the number was closer to 3,000. According to independent estimates, including coming out of the British Embassy at the time, the number exceeds 10,000 people. 10,000 people. 10,000 people protesting for their own freedom. 10,000 young people wanting a better life for themselves, wanting a future for themselves. 10,000 people standing up to a communist regime that seemed to be, superficially at least, freeing their world up And in the naivete, they thought, oh, we'll just push them a little bit and they'll speed it up and make our lives better. Give us the rights that are ours as human beings. Now, most of those students probably had not read Locke or the Founding Fathers of America, but some of them had. Many of them, I would argue, had. Many of them had even read some of the great economists, and some had even read Ayn Rand. But all of them united by the fact that they wanted to be free at whatever level they understood that concept. They wanted their own freedom, and the Chinese government took their lives for that. They shot them dead, 10,000 of them in the streets. They slaughtered them. They drove over them, and then they brought big fire hoses and they washed away the blood so that when Gorbachev came to Tiananmen Square a few days later, the place was sparkling clean. They took all the bodies. They literally used tractors to load the bodies up into trucks, and they dropped those bodies into mass graves. I think they burnt them. So many people don't even know if their loved ones died that day, because many people just disappeared and were never to be seen again. That man who stood in front of the tank, nobody really knows what happened to him. He could have been killed. He could have escaped. Rumor has it he lives in Taiwan today, that he managed to get out. I hope that rumor is correct. I hope that courageous man who was pleading for his life, who was pleading for freedom, he was pleading with his own army, the army that is there to protect him, that according to a proper understanding of the role of government, the army that is there to protect him from criminals, that is protect him from foreign invaders, to protect him from people who would slaughter him, like the Japanese, for example, did in World War II. That army turned against him and against his friends and against his people and slaughtered them. 10,000 people 29 years ago today in Tiananmen Square. Many of them, their families will never see the bodies. Many of them, their families will never quite know, because some just disappeared, some left and have stayed inside, stayed hiding, if you will, a fear of what the Chinese government would do to them to this day. And the thing is that the Chinese don't even know, the new generation doesn't even know Tiananmen Square happened. Ben says he's married to a Chinese, and she didn't even know Tiananmen Square happened because they don't teach it. They know nothing about it. You can whisper about it in Beijing. You can talk about it in silence, but it's one of those no-nos when you go to China that you're not supposed to talk about. So those of us who are still free, those of us who still have the ability to speak freely, I think it's incumbent on us to remember the 10,000 who died that day. It's incumbent to call out the Chinese government for what they did. We can do it from the safety of distance. We can do it from the safety of living in a country that is still barely holding on by its fingernails, still free, at least when it comes to ability to talk about these things. All right. So let me go to Ian's question. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk? He seems to do business only where the government subsidizes it, particularly in space. Is this a noble shift to private industry, or just a subtle way of cronyism? Or in California, where they started mandating solar? I mean, it's interesting. I don't think it's subtle. I don't think it's just another way of cronyism. I really think that Elon Musk, in some way or another, has basically chosen to focus on those areas where he can extract, if you will, funds from the government. Now, of all his endeavors, the one I actually like the most is the space, because I think it's ambitious, it's big. And the fact is that you probably cannot do space without government, right? It's a worthwhile endeavor, it's a legitimate endeavor, it's a real endeavor, it's an endeavor that would occur in a free market. And he's basically contracting himself out to NASA as part of the project. So I don't see that as quite as negative as his solar business and his auto business, Tesla, which would not exist in a free market. They're businesses that are illegitimate because they only survive, they only exist, they can only prosper in any kind of way, because of government subsidies. So while I admire Elon Musk's vision, I mean his tunneling thing and his space thing, and he has these big ideas, and I admire people with big ideas. I don't care about their politics as much as I care about people who can think out of the box, people who can have original thoughts, people who can imagine a better and new world, people who think that way. You know, that's exciting. That's thrilling. I know I get into trouble with many, you know, objectivists. I love Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. I love Jeff Bezos. I love capital L, love, you know, even Facebook and Twitter and all, just the imagination, the audacity, and then the skill to make it happen, to hire people. I've managed people. Oh, it's so hard to manage people, and they manage people on such a scale and with such vision, and they have a beautiful vision for the future in terms of technology, at least. I don't care. You know, it's like saying, I'm not going to study physics anymore. You know, I'm not going to study Einstein's theory of relativity. I'm not going to consider its truth or falsehood because Einstein was a lefty. And indeed, Einstein was almost denied immigration into the United States because he was a lefty, because J. Edgar Hoover didn't trust him, and he thought he didn't want more lefties. For those of you who want a ideological screen, it would have screened out many of those physicists who came to the United States before World War II to save themselves from Hitler and landed up contributing enormously to science in the US. It landed up helping build the atomic bomb. And they would have never been able to come here because they were leftists. If you had had that. Now, I don't know. Yeah. So I love the scope of his thinking. I hate the fact that he spent so much time in industries that have no legitimacy other than the subsidization. Somebody writes here, it's very nice. In honor for the American heroism, that's right, it's Midway. It's Midway right now. It's Midway was 42 or 43, I think. 43, June 4th through 7th. I did a talk on Midway, which I think you would really enjoy. So you can find it you can actually find it on my podcast. I put it up for free a few weeks ago. So just go to my podcast on iTunes or anywhere and just put in Midway. And it's a good talk. I think I did well. I think I did justice to Midway and to the men who fought there and to their heroism and to the importance of that event in the history of World War II. All right, Dan asks, do you think it's harder for altruists to demonize the success of tech leaders as compared with industry leaders of the past? No, I don't think so. I think the only thing that makes it more difficult for them is the cool factor, right? It's the fact, more so than businessmen of the past, the tech CEOs, at least some of them, have this cool thing going on. Particularly Steve Jobs had it, and some of these, you know, Elon Musk I think has a little bit of it. Some of these others have it, but you can see it's gone away from Zuckerberg. It's gone away from other CEOs. I don't think Bill Gates ever had it. So he was always demonized. You know, he's only been non-demonized since he became a philanthropist and not a CEO. So no, I don't think so. I think they can still demonize it, even though they see the benefits. It's what they have going for them, the tech executives, with regard to the altruists, is their leftist policies and their explicit leftist altruistic ideology. So they say, oh no, we're altruists too. And look, we're signing the giving pledge and we're giving all this stuff. And Zuckerberg gave $100 million to the New Jersey school district, which is, it wasn't even flushed down the toilet. It was just distributed to the cronies and all the really, really horrible people. And it was just corruptly disappeared. But they all put on a show, not in their business lives, but in their private lives, of how good they are in terms of altruism. But, in all these startups, they all say, oh, yeah, I want to become rich so I can do good. I mean, they all buy into altruism. It's one of the greatest tragedies ever. is the fact that all these CEOs who should be proud individualists, proud egoists, proud of their success, you know, they succumb to altruism. They at least, I think what happens to them is they think they need to feel guilty. So they act like they feel guilty. Whether they feel guilty or not, it's hard to tell. I don't think some of them do, but they need to feel guilty. They think so, intellectually, because they're altruists intellectually. So even if their emotions haven't caught up with their ideas, they act it out because they think they need to act it out. And that's what they do. It's not so much to appease other people. That's a mistake. It's not that they're buying into the graces of others, although there might be an element of that, because they're for the most part, they're first-handed people. No, it's for their own sake. It's to make them think that they are good people. So they say, ooh, I don't feel guilty about not helping the poor in Africa. I must not be a good person because I've got all this money and I don't feel guilty about that. All right, I should feel guilty, so let me go help the people in Africa. Right? So some of them actually feel guilty, but not all of them actually feel guilty. It's more, they've convinced themselves they should feel guilty. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys, but it does to me. All right, I don't know. I did want to say something about Tommy, what's his name, who was arrested in England. You know, again, some people have called me out for calling him a thug, and I'm willing to take that back. I don't know enough about him. I don't know him. He's rough, but calling him a thug is taking it a little step forward that Tommy Robinson, that I don't want to do. I don't want to judge him like that at this point. He's obviously been affiliated with some bad characters, but he seems to distance himself periodically from them. So it seems like he's not committed to the real bad kind of neo-Nazi types, racist types. He seems rough. He's a soccer fan. I won't call him a hooligan, but you know what I mean by that. And so, but thug is maybe too harsh. So I take that back, at least for now, until I know more about him. And again, I hope they free him, because my suspicion is that he's being persecuted unjustly. That whether the law about what you do outside of court is the right law or not, I suspect, and based on some stuff that I've read, it's not applied to everybody the same. It was applied to him because they were after him and they wanted to shut him down. And given that all he was doing, in this case at least, or recently, is pointing out these savage Muslim rape gangs, which you're not allowed to call them Muslim, and is just that it's just horrific. So because if you can't fight for kids being raped, if you can't fight to defend them, then then civilization is finished. It's finished, right? So if that's his main cause, if that's the cause he was fighting for, is pointing that out, then good for him. Now, remember, I'm equal opportunity here. Muslim rape gangs, evil. Catholic rape gangs, Catholic priests raping kids and then getting the protection from the Vatican, evil, just as evil. Teachers molesting children in the public schools of Chicago, evil, right? You point out evil where it exists and you call it. So the Muslim thing with the Pakistanis is related. It's related to that culture. It's related to the approach they have towards women. It's related to the culture from which they come and partially to the religion that they embrace. The Catholic priests related to Catholicism, related to their whole attitude towards sex, related to the whole attitude about not having sex, they're related to the attitude, all of that, the repression, all of that is related. You have to call it the way it is, and you can't discriminate. I hate them all. But right now, this is a massive problem in England, and it needs to be addressed, and people need to talk about it, and people need to bring it out into the open. So good for Tommy for doing that. So I take back calling him a thug. All right. I got something to say about Saudi Arabia, but it can wait. Oh yeah, let's do Saudi Arabia quickly. I'm going to do it quickly because today is a monumental day. It's an important day. Women today, for the first time, some women, I think like 10 or 20 women, were allowed to drive. Today, they got their driver's license, like 20 women in Saudi Arabia. Cool. To the extent that this is a small step towards greater liberalization and more freedom in Saudi Arabia, I applaud it. However, this is the thing. 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 3, over the last few weeks, the women who for years been advocating for giving them driver's license, advocating for more rights for women, using the idea of driving as a symbol for the lack of freedom in Saudi Arabia for women, they were all arrested. The activists. They were called treasonous against the Saudi state. Now, I read an article that pointed out that's interesting because in the past, Saudi Arabia had never used the word treason. Saudi Arabia had always used the word, in a sense, going against the religion. So you were violating religious dictates when they arrested people. And the author said that this was one of the few times that Saudi Arabia used the word treason. He's arguing that Saudi Arabia is pivoting from being a theocracy, completely dominated by religion, towards nationalism. Treason, of course, is a word that has more to do with the nation and has nothing to do with religion. So that's interesting. It's an interesting observation. We're going to have to watch it and track what they actually are going to do and what's going to happen in Saudi Arabia. There's much in me that would prefer a nationalist Saudi Arabia than a Muslim Saudi Arabia, because a Muslim Saudi Arabia exports its Wahhabi ideology and helps train and create and provide the intellectual support and ammunition and everything for terrorists to try to kill us. And nationalist Saudi Arabia is probably less dangerous for us. Still bad. Still not good for women in Saudi Arabia. Still not good for freedom fighters in Saudi Arabia, but better. So if you want to celebrate the fact that Saudi Arabia allowed 20 women to drive today, but mourn the fact that some of the most courageous women in Saudi Arabia, those actually fighting for rights and freedom, are sitting in jail. So what is it? 1 step forward, 3 steps back? Yeah, I think that's right. 1 step forward, 3 steps back for Saudi Arabia. I hope the women get released soon and that the reforms happening in Saudi Arabia are real and real and consistent. But we'll believe it when we see it. All right, quick last question. Any thoughts on the protests in Jordan? No, I haven't read enough about what's going on in Jordan, but Jordan is a tricky place. Jordan has a king who is not Jordanian. The king of Jordan is actually a Saudi. His family is Saudi, so the Jordanians don't really like the king. The king is also Western educated. And the problem in Jordan is today, over about 50% of the population, maybe now it's over 50%, are Palestinians. These are people who left what is now Israel in the West Bank and consider themselves Palestinians. The other 50% are nomads, various tribes who've always been in Jordan. And then on top of that, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or really the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a huge, powerful force within Jordan that the king and the military in Jordan have held back. But if you actually had an open, free election in Jordan, the Muslim Brotherhood would clean out. So the protests are economic, but so was the Arab Spring in Egypt. But who took advantage of those protests? It was the Muslim Brotherhood. So it's really hard to separate who is pulling the strings in the background, what is exactly happening. You know, the king had to fire the prime minister today. But of course, you know, a kingdom is not going to have a good economy. That's just part of, particularly not in the Middle East. Jordan is subsidized heavily by the Americans and defended heavily by the Israelis. I mean, Israeli intelligence probably does more to defend Jordan than the Jordan military. So I'll look into it more closely. And if I think it's important, I'll have something more to say about it. All right, everybody. Also, let me just add that Jordan is being destabilized by what's happening in Syria and what's happened with ISIS, and probably a lot of the ISIS people have escaped into Jordan. So it's a generally the fear in Jordan is of destabilization because of what's happening in all the neighboring countries. The only stable country, really stable country bordering, the two stable countries bordering Jordan are Israel and Saudi Arabia. All right, that was pretty good. I think I might cut out that segment on Tiananmen Square. I think that could stand alone, and I think my little rant on Donald Trump and character might be able to stand alone. So we'll see. All right, as always, share, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Follow me on Facebook, like me on Twitter, or the other way around. I can't remember which is which. And of course, support me and the show on Patreon so we can give you more of this good stuff. Not sure when the next show. I need to tell you this. So the next show, I'm not sure when it's going to go up, but I'm taping a show. I'm excited about this. I'm taking a show with Gad Saad. That's G-A-D-S-A-A-D, who is a evolutionary psychologist, marketing professor in Canada. A big proponent of free speech, has done some good work on the issue of free speech, grew up in Lebanon. So we can have an interesting conversation about the Middle East. He seems like a really good guy, not an objectivist. I don't know what he thinks about Ayn Rand. It's going to be interesting, but he's agreed to come on my show, so he can't hate her too much. And I want to ask him some questions about evolutionary psychology, because he takes it seriously. He studies evolutionary psychology and marketing and the intersection between the two. And I want to ask him about that and free will, because he's a proponent of free will. And yeah, I don't know where the conversation is going to go, but it's going to be interesting. Anyway, I'm going to tape that on Wednesday and put it up as soon as I can after that. And then I'll be traveling from Thursday on, so I'm not sure about the schedule of shows, but I will try to let you know. I will try to let you know as I figure it out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.